Will you support the actions of First Nations, the BC government, and their citizens, or will you stand behind big oil?
Tonight, Trudeau in town. The Prime Minister faces some tough questions in Winnipeg as part of his cross-country roadshow.
We will fully fund, immediately going forward as well as retroactively, a series of costs.
5 and counting. Is the federal government finally ready to comply with a Human Rights Tribunal order?
Our elders' dream has come true. The elders have been waiting for this for a long time.
Cold cash. Meet this year's winners of the Arctic Innovation Prize.
Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Rick Harp.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. It is day 3 of Gerald Stanley's second-degree murder trial in Battleford, Saskatchewan, and today the court heard testimony from Cassidy Cross and Belinda Jackson.
Both were in the car with Colton Bushy the day he was shot and killed. APTN's Chris Stewart has this report and a warning: some viewers may find some of the images disturbing.
Cassidy Cross was first on the stand today. He admitted to the defense that he lied to internal investigators and the preliminary inquiry about not drinking that day and not attempting to steal a car. Cross told the court he was the lone driver and said he consumed more than 30 shots of liquor over the day. After losing a tire on the way home, he drove to a farm and tried to break into a car. He broke his .22 caliber rifle trying to get in. Cross then drove into what was the Stanley farm. Cross told the court that Eric Meachance exited the vehicle and attempted and failed to start a quad. He then heard yelling. Meachance re-entered the car and attempted to back up. Someone smashed their windshield with a hammer. The car hit a parked car. Meachance ran from the car and yelled, "Let's go, Cassidy." Cross fled as well. Belinda Jackson testified next. She was in the back seat and was also drinking. She told the court that Bushy was sitting in the front passenger side of the car at Stanley's farm. She testified she did not remember much, but did remember seeing the windshield being smashed. She saw Cross and Meachance run from the car. Jackson said she heard a man say, "Go get a gun." She saw the man go into a garage and return with a handgun. She told the court that the man walked to the side of the passenger side of the car and shot Colton Bushy in the head. She said there were 4 shots. The first 2 were at Bushy, the other 2 were at Meachance and Cross. The defense noted inconsistencies with her testimony and her first statement to police. Stanley's lawyer, Scott Spencer, showed Jackson her initial statement. In it, Jackson told the RCMP that she believed the woman had a gun and may have shot Bushy, and Bushy was shot outside the vehicle. She told the defense that she was still intoxicated and confused when she made her initial statement. During a break, FSIN Vice Chief Heather Bair commented on today's proceedings.
What the truth is, a young boy has lost his life, and I don't think it was the right thing to do myself, kill a young boy. Whether they were doing wrong or right, I think that was so very, very harsh, and a lot of people are suffering because of it.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Battleford, Saskatchewan.
To Quebec now, and a warning that video in this next story is disturbing and hard to watch. It's from a violent confrontation at a courthouse in Maniwaki, north of Ottawa. The altercation erupted between a constable and an 18-year-old man.
That's abuse of force.
The altercation erupted between a constable and an 18-year-old man. The man, who is not reportedly Indigenous, allegedly wanted to go for a cigarette when the constable put him in a headlock. Other officers appeared to intervene, but the teen was shot in the head when things escalated further. The constable says the teen grabbed his baton and struck him on the head. A statement from Quebec's Independent Investigations Unit, now in charge of the case, suggests a taser was used before the man was shot. The family says an 18-year-old is now in a coma, and the officer was also taken to the hospital. And we would like to hear what you have to say about this or any other story. Here's how to contact us. Send an email to news@aptn.ca, like our APTN National News Facebook page, follow us on Twitter @APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Winnipeg Wednesday evening, the site of his latest town hall meeting. It was the 5th stop on his coast-to-coast tour, and as Brittany Hobson reports, the crowd threw him some tough questions.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was met with a warm greeting at the University of Manitoba. But the heckling started as soon as he got into fielding tough questions on a range of topics. Topics like child welfare, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and pipelines. Local activist Clayton Thomas Mueller interrupted one man's question to ask why the Liberals are allowing Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain Pipeline to go ahead.
We already know that First Nations municipalities and people all across BC do not consent to Kinder Morgan. Now, the BC government has made its position clear as well by blocking new tar sands shipments. Will you support the actions of First Nations, the BC government, and their citizens, or will you stand behind big oil and tear our country apart by going against the BC government on the Kinder Morgan pipeline?
The BC government says it will restrict shipments of oil through the province, adding uncertainty for the project. Trudeau said the decisions governments make need to be in the best interest of all Canadians. Child welfare brought forth passionate pleas from mothers and Indigenous leaders.
I would like your government to recognize our jurisdiction that we have over our children, and that we pull away our children out of a system, an incentivized system that disrespects our children and has no accountability back to our families.
We need to fix this. We need to work together to get solutions on it. I know our Minister of Indigenous Services, Jane Philpott, has made this a central priority for her. We commit that we will work with you on this, because we cannot keep taking our kids away from families and not giving them the opportunity to grow up in their language, their culture, and proud of who they are.
A high school student asked the Prime Minister how his government will decide if the national inquiry is a success or not.
Ideally, it'll provide closure and healing for the families, a measure of justice for the victims, and mostly show us how to put an end to this ongoing national tragedy.
Brianna Johnny said conversations with families drove her to ask the question.
But to hear those and to hear how these people are feeling with the people that they've lost is absolutely horrible. So I wanted to be able to at least ask for myself to hear that, and for others who are listening in to hear that as well.
This marked the 5th town hall. Trudeau will be in Edmonton Thursday evening. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for a break. When we return, will the 4th time be the charm?
Find out how Ottawa has reacted to the latest non-compliance order for its inequitable funding of First Nations child welfare programs. Stay with us.
I'm Todd Lamourant. Here's what's coming up on Nation to Nation. In the past few weeks, Indigenous Services Minister Jane Philpott has made a number of announcements and promises. And the political panel is back to discuss how well the new department has done. As well, the leader of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is here to talk about his perspective on a nation-to-nation relationship. And an Indigenous woman from Mexico has made the trip to Ottawa to tell Canadians about how the Mexican government is ramming through a highway development through her community. That's coming up after the national news.
Your weather starting in the East St. John's, 7, Charlottetown 3, Fredericton 0. We've got -5 at Happy Valley of Goose Bay. Montreal -13, -21 in Val-d'Or. Toronto -10, Sault Ste. Marie -12. Kapuskasing -19, Thunder Bay -17. Into Manitoba, we have Churchill at -29. Further south, Winnipeg's -17, Dauphin -18. 22 minus in North Battleford. Uranium City's -26, Meadow Lake -22. The federal government has received yet another failing grade from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. It was just over 2 years ago that the tribunal first ordered the government to properly fund on-reserve child welfare programs that received less money than their off-reserve equivalents. This is the fourth time the government has been found to be non-compliant. Here's how the Minister of Indigenous Services responded to this morning in Ottawa.
We sent out letters today to 105 child and family service agencies across the country, indicating to them that we will fully fund immediately going forward, as well as retroactively, a series of costs that pertain largely to prevention work and the actual costs that it takes for these agencies to do that prevention work.
Cindy Blackstock is the Executive Director of the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society. It was her efforts on a human rights case dating back to 2007 that led up to today's action. Thank you for joining us. So the tribunal has released its fifth order to the federal government. Yes. What do you think has been accomplished for the First Nations kids in the past 2 years?
Well, not much, and that's why there's been 5 orders and 4 non-compliance orders. But today, I think the tribunal's order is very specific, it's time limited, and that means that the government has to act on those decisions, or it could risk being found in contempt. And I was really pleased to hear the minister's statement to say they are going to comply, and now we all need to wait to see that that happens, because to me, this has always been about change on the ground for kids.
Right. Well, and the response was fairly quick. Minister Philpott said today, sent out 105 letters to First Nations that they will cover the actual cost. What's your response to that?
That's been something we've actually been asking for many years. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad that on the heels of this order, the tribunal has required them to fund at actual costs. And not only that, the tribunal doesn't want Canada to profit from its discrimination. So it has to go back to the date of the original decision, January 26th, and reimburse those actual costs going back 2 years. So all of that means more services, more supports for families and for their children. And I'm really pleased about that. I'm really grateful to the tribunal, and I hope to see Canada fully comply.
What else needs to happen, though? I mean, in a perfect world, where does it go from here?
In a perfect world, what we need to see is Canada to expand the models that it will provide funding for child welfare to respect First Nations jurisdiction. That recommendation has been on the books for 18 years. Right now, Canada will only provide funding to First Nations agencies if they operate under provincial statutes. The second thing that needs to happen is implementation of Spirit Bear's plan. We know that the inequalities in First Nations child welfare echo across education, early childhood, child and maternal health, mental health, and basics like water and housing. And Spirit Bear's plan is get the parliamentary budget officer to cost all those things out and then develop a plan to eradicate them. Let's make this the first generation of kids who doesn't have to dream of equality, they actually can live it.
I mean, you make it sound easy. I guess it just takes some political will, right?
It does, and you think about it, every other kid in this country already gets the basics that First Nations children are striving for. So if they can do it for every other child in the country, then they certainly should be able to do it for First Nations kids. And it shouldn't take a week, it shouldn't take a month, it should be done today.
Cindy, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for having us.
To the West Coast now, where questions continue to rage over the state of salmon in British Columbia. Are deadly diseases from farmed fish killing off those found in the wild? How will that affect First Nations who depend on the industry? Just some of the questions to be explored in the next episode of APTN Investigates. Here's a preview of the Salmon Warriors from reporter Colin Crozier.
Just off the northeastern coast of Vancouver Island, Hereditary Chief Willie Moon is setting course for the Midsummer Island Fish Farm. Along for the journey are his daughter Sherry and 2 young grandchildren. The family is Muskama Zawadenek, and the farm is in the middle of their people's traditional unceded territory. The coastal waters of the Broughton Archipelago are breathtaking. But look a little closer and you'll find a region in turmoil. This massive floating structure is the Midsummer Island Fish Farm, home to over 500,000 farmed Atlantic salmon. It's owned by Marine Harvest, a Norwegian company that operates nearly half of all fish farms in the province. In the last few weeks, the company and its farms have become the epicenter of a First Nations-led protest against the industry.
A lot of our smolts that do come out of our river systems, you know, they're stopping by these farms, and then they're getting attacked by the sea lice. So we lose about 50 or 60% of our smolts every year. And that's, you know, if that continues, we're not going to have salmon in 5 years, 10 years' time.
And of course, you can catch that whole program tomorrow on APTN Investigates right after the news.
It's time for a break. When we return, has northern tourism helped northern people?
Please stay with us.
Fort Chip is minus 24, Peace River minus 23, minus 18 in Calgary, minus 15 in Medicine Hat. On to the west coast, we've got Vancouver at 8, Port Hardy at 7. Dease Lake is minus 19, Fort Nelson minus 22, up at Old Crow minus 28, and Whitehorse is minus 27. Norman Wells minus 21, Sachs Harbor's minus 28, Colville Lake minus 23, and over at Whale Cove minus 33. Clyde Rivers minus 32, Cape Dorset minus 31.
From the beginning, APTN National News and APTN Investigates made a commitment to journalistic excellence.
We were the first Aboriginal network in the world.
Our work has been recognized by respected agencies worldwide. In May 2016, we were recognized with awards from the Canadian Association of Journalists. In October, APTN's Paul Barnsley was presented with the JHR Lifetime Achievement Award in Human Rights Reporting. This past January, APTN accepted an ECPAT Canada Media Award. And most recently in May, APTN was honored with the coveted Canadian Association of Journalists Charles Burry Award in recognition of significant contribution to Canadian journalism. APTN would like to thank you, our viewers, and reaffirm our commitment to you. APTN National News and APTN Investigates, uncovering the stories that others won't.
Welcome back. Canada is playing host to a growing number of Chinese visitors. Many are heading north. But is that boost to the bottom line benefiting Indigenous operators from the region? Our reporter Charlotte Morit-Jacobs explores that question.
That's the sight of tourists eager to experience the Aurora Borealis, or what Bobby Drygeese calls Naka.
There's a river, Cho means big.
Drygeese has been operating B. Denny Adventures cultural tours for nearly a decade. Guests learn about Denendeh traditions.
He told me many things that I didn't know it before, such as the conflicts between this tribe and another tribe, or these mountains, rivers here. All that I didn't know it.
I know there is many bears live there, and they use fire to cooking fish.
Just be careful there.
And business is booming. Despite the crowds, Drygeese is concerned. He says the NWT will need to offer more opportunities for tourists to participate in traditional Indigenous culture. That means supporting operators who rely on seasons to build.
Just the process, though, I had to wait, and a lot of times we get approved for funding in March, but then we didn't get nothing till May. But then the ice is gone, so I can't haul anything here till I wait for the boat for another 2 months.
In 2016, Canada and China signed an agreement to promote tourism. So now, along with Japanese and South Korean tourists, Yellowknife will see an influx of Chinese visitors. Last year, almost 30,000 tourists came to view the aurora, almost a quarter increase from the previous season. An outdoor adventure almost doubled their numbers. But as tourism grows, so do the number of facilitators from elsewhere, and that could be a problem.
Even with the translators and interpreters, like I always tell them that I have to speak first and then you interpret. But they've been here for so long, then they start explaining before they even come to us, so then you don't ask questions after that.
Drygeese adds that despite his concerns, being able to share his culture with others makes late nights in -40°C worth it. And for many tourists, well, they just hope to see the lights.
If you can see the aurora once, even once in your lifetime, it will lighten your whole life.
Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Beta First Nation.
An urban healing program in the Northwest Territories has a lot more money to grow its work today. Last night, members of the Arctic Indigenous Wellness Project were one of 8 teams honored at a ceremony in Ottawa. Hundreds gathered for the 6th annual Arctic Inspiration Prize ceremony at the Shaw Centre. Close to $3 million were awarded to team projects aimed at providing opportunities in the North. The prize went to the Arctic Indigenous Wellness Project. The $1 million award will help provide culturally based healing programs to First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people in the Northwest Territories.
Our elders' dream has come true. The elders have been waiting for this for a long time. To bring back all our gifts that we are born with, so that we can unite the Arctic as one people, to make it the best for the future, so that we can take this role to help people in the Arctic to heal.
Meanwhile, in the Yukon this week, some recognition for the founder of the Blue Feather Music Festival. Gary Bailey from the Kwalin-Dun First Nation received the Governor General's Meritorious Service Decoration. In a ceremony, Bailey received the medal for starting the Blue Music Benefit Concert in 2000. It was Bailey's way of honoring his late partner, Jolie Angelina McNabb, who committed suicide while in remand at the Whitehorse Correctional Center. Now a 2-day festival, the event's proceeds go to youth organizations across the Yukon.
I wanted to dedicate this medal to the Blue Feather team because I couldn't do this alone, and it's been teamwork all the way. There's an old African proverb I really like. It's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's the reason we've made it this many years. Like, this is our 18th year, and we're going to keep on going, right? So, and then to all the young people who are part of our group now who are starting to take over, right? So it's great. So thank you.
Well, that's it for this edition of APTN National News. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for all the latest news-making headlines in Indigenous country.
And for News 24/7, make sure to head to our website, aptnnews.ca, where you can watch previous episodes of this newscast and other APTN News programs. I'm Rick Harp. Thanks for watching.
I'm Melissa Ridgen. Take care.